Welcome to my garden, to the GinGee GoodEarth show. I'm your host, Ginger Lily, aka GinGee GoodEarth. This is a GinGee GoodEarth production, Liberty 3. Director, again, Ginger Lily, all for the American people and international peoples of Earth with a capital E. Today is December 15th. It is the month of December, the great month of seasonal festivities for all who usually celebrate a holiday weekend on the 25th. And again, I'm celebrating Hanukkah and Christmas and celebrating celestial seasons and all the different faiths. So I'm actually celebrating with all of you. Okay, I'm a grandmother, so I enjoy celebrating with everybody and their traditions and cultures. But again, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and all goodwill towards men. So today's going to be a special day. I am reading the next chapter on the universal history of the United States of America. It's chapter 9, and it is Evacuation of Canada, Capture of Burgoyne, and Fall of Philadelphia. So we'll be reading this chapter, page 186, and just looking at my notes. And again, I want to say that I'm happy to be here, and I'm going to do 3 tapes today on December 15th to help celebrate the December seasons and celebrate the Pittsburgh Victorian Gibson Girls. And again, let's go ahead and get this clipboard shuffle to begin the program. I have a very special picture, so I have to put this down. I'm struggling. I don't have a tripod. Okay. So that was an eventful mistake. Okay, so I wanted to share with you. Oh, it's not holding. I guess I have too much stuff on my table. So we'll do it this way. I need the safeguard soap. That'll work as a stand. Okay, so I'm bringing it back, and I don't have a script, so I'm sorry about that fiasco. But who are we looking at? Well, we're looking at Hiawatha. And my cousin, Joanne Posterpack, was the drawer of chalk drawings for the cartoon Hiawatha. And here is her signature for Walt Disney. And this was given to me as a memento. And there I am. I actually paint totem poles. So let's get a long view. So there I am with Thunder Mountain, Lenape Nation, Salzburg, Pennsylvania, celebrating festivities. And I painted this totem pole along with Sitting Bull's great-great-granddaughter, Machawi. And we worked on it together, but I really enjoy painting and drawing, and I'm hoping to get back into it. So there's the Pittsburgh Victorian Gibson Girls and Gentlemen. And what I have today is a special tape. So I'm going in and out in view here, but I just got it made. The VHS tapes transformed into a beautiful DVD, and I'm going to put it on live tonight for the GinGee GoodEarth YouTube channel and celebrate the season. And I wanted to remind everybody that, you know, when the year 2000 hit, okay, when the year 2000 hit, that was the year that the 21st century started. So always remember that you live in the 21st century. Don't forget, you are living in the 21st century. So, and today is still President Donald Trump's official president. Woohoo! And here's the American flag for the American dream for everybody. And I have a good program. I'm going to go ahead right away and read the chapter. I hope I didn't lose my page with everything falling apart. I did say 187. There we are, 186. Okay, so next is the picture show, and I'm going to put the camera down for the picture show. And hopefully you'll see the gin and the spaceship, because that's what everyone comes to. Most of my fans have commented that they want to see the gin, they want to see the spaceship. So while I'm reading, I hope it comes on, and I'm going to point to where the creature is. It's on this side of the laptop screen, and then you'll see the spaceship jetting out. And so it's there, and I've made a lot. There's Charles Denny Gibson print of a Gibson girl, and I haven't even gotten to my Gibson girl programs. I made that. I made that picture scene, and I put things together. Also, I wanted to show you this picture because, oh, look at perfect timing. I took this picture, okay? See, here's the original, and then they have the same painted picture, pretty much so, at the Westmoreland Museum of Art. But as you can see, I took this picture, and then they actually have a painting of this. It's pretty identical. So just for fun, I'm going to look for it for something to do too. And again, oh boy, so let's go ahead and take this picture down before it falls again. So we have some fun things to do tonight. And it's daylight, okay, so we don't have to worry about but tonight I'll put on the Christmas lights and the ornaments and the candles, and I finally got my book. I've been talking about this, outlawing the Almighty. I'm going to read this in its entirety today because I want to reread it and share it with you. But let's go back to the antique book, Universal History of the United States of America. And whoops, and I'm going to read this. I made that cover drawing. It won first place. And she's holding a teacup. That's the birth of Venus. And then she's holding a teacup, tea and sympathy. Okay, so we're going to read. I'm going to put a candle on. I still can't see. So we have to put a candle on. And I thought, well, let's just go ahead and just get another program in. I'm up to 90 programs, but again, as I mentioned, I will be editing each one. So if you wanted to keep something and save it, you'll have to copy it. But I'll be scaling down every single one of my videos. And as I said, I don't use a script. And there's some things I just want to update and change around. And when you're the author of your work, you have the right to do that. And so I'll let you know. And I try to keep everything, whoops, warm and cozy. See? Okay. So we're trying. Okay. And here's the GinGee girl looking sea glasses, and I'm looking at the beautiful horses and the quilt, and my stage set is very much different. So we'll be going to refer this in the future. And then again, in the future, I will have script works of comedy and theater and the history of the Gilded Age of Victorian ladies. And I also will be focusing on reading chapters on how to become a beekeeper. So stay happy and get to the casino and have a big win. Right here I won $43.83. Also, my next project is I'm going to all the local pubs, and I'm taking my Stouffer's handbook, and I'll be making drinks and talking with the bartenders, and that will be on video. So I'm working on that project too. It's endless. There's so many great ideas and things to do. It's endless. And again, the front page of our Pittsburgh paper, the the new editor-in-chief decided to put an article out on the front page telling us to go ahead and get the vaccine. Hey, listen, she's not a physician. She has no authority to propaganda on that topic. The main thing is that you safeguard your life, remind yourself every day before you go out of your home to safeguard your life and safeguard others. And this is the same basic principle. When you're a person of faith and prayer and spiritual being, before you leave your home, it was traditional for all the family members to be at their altar that they had at their house and pray. And an example of that, so before you leave the house, you kneel down and you rehearse your agenda silently in meditation and prayer, and then you'll have a safer day. It's that simple. It's that simple. The things that, now here's a girl and her sister, and she's praying, and she's burning incense, and again, Native Americans, they do smudging with rosemary, and it's a time for you to, think back, using your brain and all your senses, and your hope and faith, and guiding your heart in the right direction. Safety first. Safety first. Safeguard your life. Use safeguard soap, please. And pray and meditate. Goodwill to all men and women. Okay, so we're on chapter 9. And remember, always, here's a nice photo. Be you. Be you. Be you. Okay? Love one another. Okay, Evacuation of Canada, Chapter 9, Capture of Burgoyne and Fall of Philadelphia. So let's just go back, and we have this wonderful picture of this young gentleman, George Washington, 21 years old, and he's, the general in chief. The general in chief. Okay? Alrighty. So here we have a holiday Christmas set. And GinGee, you better get going. Start reading. So I'm backing track to page 185. In April, General Howe detached Governor Tyrone with the command of a major general of provincials at the head of about 2,000 men to destroy the American stores at Danbury, Connecticut? Okay, the general executed this commission and destroyed 1,800 barrels of beef, 2,000 bushels of wheat, 800 barrels of flour, 1,700 tents, 100 hogsheads of rum, and with the loss of about 400 men killed, wounded, and taken by the Americans. But this expedition cost the British a severe loss. 3 generals were in the neighborhood: Wooster, Arnold, Sullivan. About 600 militia were collected in great haste and followed in pursuit about 2 miles during a heavy rain. The next morning the troops were divided. Wooster fell in the rear of the enemy, while Arnold was posted at Ridgefield in their front. Wooster attacked the enemy and was mortally wounded in the contest. The troops had to retreat. Arnold gave them a severe reception at Ridgefield and was repulsed, but renewed the attack during the next day. The yeomanry of the country through which they passed towards the Sound constantly annoyed them, and they made a precipitate retreat to their ships, which conveyed them to New York. They lost in killed, wounded, and missing about 170, while the loss of Americans did not exceed 100. General Rooster lingered until the 2nd of May, and expired in his 70th year. A monument was voted to his memory by Congress, and a horse, splendidly caparisoned, presented to Arnold, as a token of respect for his intrepidity and good conduct. Now, Chapter 9. Evacuation of Canada, Capture of Burgoyne, and Fall of Philadelphia. We must now return to the affairs in the North. General Montgomery fell at Quebec, and the command devolved on Colonel Arnold, who had been badly wounded. But he was removed to Montreal and was succeeded by General Thomas. He soon died, and General Sullivan was appointed to his place. The smallpox, with other diseases, reduced the number of men to 400. The siege was raised, and this handful of men was compelled to retreat for Montreal. A reinforcement had arrived from England, and the army in Canada was now 13,000 strong. With this force, Governor Carleton and Generals Burgoyne, Fraser, Phillips, and Riedesel advanced in different divisions in pursuit of Sullivan. General Fraser took post at the Trois Rivières when the Americans attempted a surprise, but it miscarried, and General Thompson was left in the hands of the English. Carleton pursued with his whole force, but the retreat of Sullivan was secured, and they reached the river Sorel in safety, where he was met by Arnold from Montreal. The troops, baggage, and cannon were embarked, and they made a stand at Crown Point on the 15th of June, 1776. In the fort part of July, General Sullivan left the command of the Northern Army and was succeeded by General Gates. The army was diminished more than 5,000, and the ravages of the smallpox were deadly alarming. About 300 sick were removed to Fort George. The exertions of Governor Carleton to prepare his fleet to meet the Americans on the lake were great and increasing. Early in October, troops were embarked and the operations commenced. A sharp action ensued near Vaucouleurs Island, and much valor was displayed on both sides. But the Americans were overpowered, dispersed, taken, or destroyed, which enabled the army to approach Ticonderoga on the 11th of October. But this victory was not followed up with spirit. Hostile operations were suspended for the season, and the governor retired into Canada. To the honor of the governor, we would here second his humanity to his prisoners, who were often dismissed and with kindness and furnished with necessaries to reach their friends in the United States. These traits in his character are worthy of perpetual remembrance and gratitude. General Gates discharged the militia, and the campaign was closed. General Burgoyne succeeded to the command after Carleton in the spring of 1777. Operations were commenced early at the head of 10,000 men, English and German, commanded by General Phillips, Fraser, Powell, Hamilton, and by the German generals Radestid and Spicht. The army was well appointed and well supplied with every facility to ensure a successful campaign. The troops were in fine health and high spirits. To this powerful armament were attached several tribes of Indians, who were to take field on the conditions of humanity. They were not to scalp the wounded, nor their prisoners, but a bounty was to be given for every prisoner taken and brought in alive. Now, scalping was invented in the European debacles of war, and it was not anything that was a tradition war tactic by first Americans, the native woodland Indian. In June, the army arrived at Crown Point, and on the 19th, operations were commenced against Ticonderoga. General Gates was succeeded in his command by General Schuyler, who placed the fortress in good order for defense and gave the command to General St. Clair. The fort was approached on the right wing of the American army on the 2nd of July. Let's try to get this. There. I'm going to fix that. Okay, here we are, the 2nd of July, 1777. And possession taken of Mount Defiance. This lies contiguous to Ticonderoga and overlooks the fortress. This mount had hitherto been deemed inaccessible and remained unoccupied. Cannon were hoisted by tackles until the force was sufficient to dislodge the garrison. To save the men, the fort was abandoned, and the American force retired to Happerbartensden, thence to Castleton, where a stand was made, about 30 miles from Ticonderoga. General Fraser, supported by General Radestid, commenced a pursuit in the morning, and with the light troops of the British and Germans this is not standing very well. Okay, there we go. That looks nice. Okay. This amount had hitherto been deemed inaccessible and had remained unoccupied. Cannon were hoisted by tackles until the force was sufficient to dislodge the garrison. To save the men, the fort was now abandoned, and the American force retired to Happerbartensden, and thence to Castleton, where a stand was made, about 30 miles from Ticonderoga. General Fraser, supported by General Radestid, commenced a pursuit in the morning with the light troops of the British and the Germans, and overtook the American rear guard under Colonel Warner at Castleton, and commenced an attack on the 7th, which became sharp and bloody. The British were routed at first with loss, but finding the Colonel Warner was not supported by General St. Clair, they rallied to the combat and with the bayonet charged and dispersed the Americans' rear with the loss of about 300 men, and Colonel Warner retired with the remainder of his troops to Fort Anne. General Burgoyne, with the main body of the British Army, sailed from Ticonderoga in pursuit of the American fleet, destroyed and dispersed the whole, and landed at Skinsborough, now Whitehall. He there detached Lieutenant Colonel Hill with a strong party to dislodge the Americans from Fort Anne. Cultivating your mental health is a good thing to do. Okay, he detached Lieutenant Colonel Hill with a strong party to dislodge the Americans from Fort Anne. The garrison marched out on the morning of the 6th and commenced an attack upon the detachment, which was sharply supported by both parties for about 2 hours, with apparent success on the part of the Americans, but a party of the Indians appeared and joined Colonel Hill, and the Americans withdrew from the field, abandoned the fortress, and retrieved to Fort Edward July 12th. The whole force at this time at Fort Edward did not exceed 5,000 men. The operations of both armies were now commenced with vigor. In this retreat, the American general destroyed bridges, obstructed the roads to impede the pursuit of Burgoyne, but all these difficulties were surmounted, and on the 30th of the month the British force reached Fort Edward, which had been abandoned by Schuyler on the 27th. He retired to Saratoga, and we all love Saratoga Springs, and on the 1st of August removed to Stillwater, only 35 miles north of Albany. The nation saw the deep regret that this remnant of an army was compelled to flee before a victorious enemy, and that these important fortresses were abandoned. These events greatly depressed the spirits of our countrymen, while the foe exulted in the triumph. On the 3rd of August, Colonel St. Leger was detached by General Burgoyne against Fort Stanwix as a division. To relieve the fort, the general was ordered down with 800 militia. Near the fort he fell into an Indian ambush and was killed. In the most severe action, the garrison sallied out, decided the sanguinary contest, drove the Indians, and relieved the fortress. The colonies sent a summons to the fort to surrender, but Colonel Gransvarut returned a prompt and spirited reply, and St. Leger withdrew precipitately and returned to the lake. During these movements, General Washington detached General Lincoln to the northward to take command of such eastern militia as might join the northern army. General Lincoln arrived at Manchester on the 2nd of August, where he took the command of 600 militia, and on the 6th he was joined by General Stark with 800 more. General Stark was a soldier of merit and had deserved well of his country by his distinguished services in the famous Battle of Bunker Hill. But he had felt himself wounded by the neglect of Congress after the battle and retired from service. He engaged at this time in the service of his country upon the express condition that he should not be constrained to serve under a continental officer. He accordingly resisted the pressing solicitousness of General Schuyler to join him in checking the progress of General Burgoyne. solicitations of General Schuyler to join him in the checking the progress of General Burgoyne. Congress interposed in this controversy, and at this eventful moment, General Burgoyne detached Colonel Baum with 500 Germans and 100 Indians to seize the American stores at Bennington, to enable him to pursue his reach to Albany. Of New York, General Stark was apprised of this movement and sent expresses to collect the neighboring militia, and marched to meet the enemy on the 14th, supported by Colonels Warner, Williams, and Brush. The advance parties of the two armies met and commenced a skirmishing that continued through the day. On the 15th, all operations, and today's the 15th, by the way, of December 2020. How do you like that wonderful solar panel sailboat? On the 15th, all operations were suspended by the excessive rains that fell, but on the 16th, General Stark was joined by Berkshire militia under Colonel Simons, and he detached Nichols to take post in the rear of the enemy, and on the left, Colonel Hendrick to take post in the rear of the right, to be supported by Colonels Hubbard and Stickley. Still further on the right, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, General Stark commenced an attack upon the enemy, strongly entrenched and supported by 2 field pieces. The attack became general and was violent, strong. He was valiant. He was violently supported on both sides. So it was, strong and helpful, and he was, so encouraged. The Indians fled. The Germans were overpowered, forced from their entrenchments, put into flight. The militia, flushed with the successes of the day, abandoned the pursuit and gave themselves up to plunder. At this eventful moment, Lieutenant Colonel Bryman joined Colonel Baum with a reinforcement. They rallied to the charge and renewed the combat. Colonel Warner led on his regiment of Continentals at this critical moment and supported the action until the militia could recover their order and advance to the charge. The action soon became general and continued through the day. The Germans again gave way and secured their retreat under cover of the night, leaving their artillery, baggage, with 200 slain, 700 prisoners, among whom was Colonel Baum. This was an important action and proved ruinous to General Burgoyne. This action was highly applauded, and a brigadier's commission was made out to Colonel Stark in the Continental service. This success gave fresh courage to the Americans, and the public pulse beat high with expectation. General Gates now took command of an army, and the militia joined the army with alacrity. On the rear of the British army was an American force under General Lincoln, and on the 18th, General Brown destroyed the British stores at Lake George, releasing a number of American prisoners. Successful operations were also commenced against Ticonderoga and Skinsborough, now Whitehall. General Burgoyne had crossed the Hudson and finally took post at Stillwater, but 3 miles from General Gates. On the 18th of September, General Gates detached about 3,000 men to offer the enemy battle, but declined the combat. I gotta fix something. So he declined. Okay, let's see what he said. On the 18th of September, General Gates detached about 3,000 men to offer the enemy battle. But he declined the combat. On the 19th, the scouting parties of the two armies commenced a skirmishing that led to a general action which continued through the day and was supported with great zeal and intrepid bravery. Night closed the scene, and the two generals drew off their armies to protect their camps and waited for the impatience the returning day. In this action, the American loss was about 300 and that of the English was 500. In this action, oh, look at the kitty cat, and I have great news today. I adopted 2 calico, 1 tortoise, and 1 long-hair calico kitty cats. Atasha and Paris are their names. The tortoise is Paris, and it's Astoria, really. And so I'll be introducing them on camera. So, we talked about the 18th of September, and with impatience, the returning day. In this action, the American loss was about 300, and that of the English about 500. I gotta get a sip of my coffee. Didn't I bring it down? Oh, let's see. I have some number. I'm losing my voice. Okay, so I put on a little 45. Jeremiah was a bullfrog. Okay. It's very faint. You won't hear very much of it, but there's no way I can get through all my 45 records. Okay, so where are we at? The American strength was now about 7,000, and not including about 2,000 under General Lincoln, who were then at Bennington. The Indian allies of Great Britain were deserting the standard of General Burgoyne since the late contest, and 4 of the 6 nations favored the cause of America and furnished 150 warriors. The troops under General Lincoln now added to the force under General Gates and revived the spirits of the army. Until the 7th of October, the armies were within common shot, and skirmishes were frequent and severe. The armies were harassed and alarmed. The situation of Burgoyne was becoming critical, and he applied to Sir Henry Clinton for relief. The latter had just received 2,000 men from Europe and then commenced operations by the capture of West Point, a strong fortress on the Hudson. He was then enabled to clear the obstructions on the river and leave a free passage for his shipping. Of all this, General Burgoyne had intelligence, but too late to render him any service. As General Burgoyne determined on retreat, he sent forward a strong party on one side, while he headed another, supported by General Fraser, and a contest was commenced immediately and lasted through the day. Victory perched on the American standard, and they were successful at all points. General Arnold fought desperately and received a wound in the action. General Fraser and Sir James Clark were mortally wounded. In the heat of the action, General Morgan, the future hero of the Battle of Calpens, selected several of his sharpshooters and pointing them to a British officer who appeared most conspicuously active in his duty of the head of his division, mounted upon an iron-gray charger, that's a horse, iron-gray charger, thus addressed them. That gallant officer is General Fraser. I admire him, I respect him, but it is necessary that he should die. Take your station in that wood and do your duty. It is unnecessary to add that General Fraser soon fell mortally wounded. General Fraser and Sir James Clark were mortally wounded, and the latter became a prisoner. General Burgoyne changed his position in the night, and the Americans spoiled the British camp. The British now expected a momentary attack. The British now expected a momentary attack, and were under arms all the day. On the 8th, and at the sunset, the last honors were paid to the remains of the much lamented Fraser. On the 9th, the English army was so closely invested that the commander resolved on a retreat to Saratoga. This was effected with no other loss than that of his hospital of sick and wounded, which he was compelled to abandon to the mercy of General Gates, who did honor to his character in the display of his benevolent feelings in behalf of the sufferers. General Burgoyne now perceived that all the passes in his rear were strongly guarded and that further retreat was next to impossible. In this difficulty he called a council on the 13th. While the council was deliberating, an 18th-pound shot crossed the table, and they resolved unanimously to propose terms with General Gates. The proposals of General Gates were rejected, and the General Burgoyne then sent in terms on which the capitulation was finally made. The news of the capture in the Highlands is said to have arrived in this juncture. I wonder if that has to do with any of the Ireland Highlanders. They were a troop of men. The news of the capture in the Highlands is said to have arrived at this juncture, which led General Burgoyne, hesitant in expectation of relief from Sir Henry Clinton. General Gates, seizing the critical moment, drew up his army in the battle array and sent in a flag, demanding a reply in 10 minutes. The responsibility was great, and Burgoyne felt it. The treaty was signed and returned in due time. The whole British army marched out of their lines, deposited their arms, and became prisoners of war. General Gates marched in under the tune of Yankee Doodle and took quite the possession. General Gates ordered supplies to be issued to the British army, who were destitute, and the solemn scene was closed. I'm a Yankee Doodle dandy, da 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 da. You're a grand old flag, you're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace you may wave. You're the emblem of the land I love, the home of the free and the brave. Every heart speaks true for the red, white, and blue, and there's never a boast or a brag. If old acquaintance be forgot, keep your eye on the grand old flag. Sorry about that. With no rehearsal, that was spontaneous. You're a grand old flag. I'm an alto, of course. Okay, alright, so anyhow, we read that, and now we're on page 193. Boy, I can't, it's really bad. My eyes are getting really bad. Okay, such and so various are the scenes of life, and the faces, here we go, this is a very important sentence, so let me read it right. Such and so various are the scenes of life, and the fates of men, such and so fickle is the fortune of war, but firm and unshaken is the providence of God, wisdom and might, and strength are his. Sir Henry Clinton detached Sir James Wallace and General Vaughan with a flying squadron, carrying 3,600 troops to penetrate, if possible, to the camp of Burgoyne, and make a diversion in his favor, but learning the situation of General Burgoyne as Aesopus, on the 13th they set fire to the village and consumed it. Had they proceeded to Albany, they might have destroyed the place with the American stores, and Burgoyne might have been relieved. The inquiry has often been made why this unnecessary delay, but no other answer can be given than this: it was the special providence of God. The army of General Burgoyne was marched directly to Boston, where they were detained as prisoners of war. Having thus restored tranquility in the north, the army under General Gates marched to support General Putnam at Kingston and guard the country from the incursions of the British. The alarm was taken, and the enemy hastened back to New York. We will now take a look at the transactions of the conquering army of New York about the time that victory perched on the British standard on Lake Champlain, and under the direction of Burgoyne. General Howe embarked with about 16,000 troops with 260 sail, and on the 23rd of July went to sea on private expedition to make a diversion at the south. General Washington then made movement towards Delaware, that he might cover Philadelphia. Oh, what did Delaware, boy, what did Delaware? She wore a New Jersey, she wore a New Jersey. That's what Della wore. Whoa, General Howe maneuvered on the coast some days and finally entered the Chesapeake. Washington advanced to meet him. The British troops were landed at Elk River Ferry, and the two armies met at Chad's Ford on the Brandywine, where an action was fought on the 11th of September. Victory declared for the English, and Washington retired to high grounds to watch the enemy. Philadelphia was entered on the 26th, when Congress retired to Lancaster. About this time, the Marquis Lafayette arrived. About this time, the Marquis Lafayette arrived in the... I gotta turn the page. Whoops. I need a little sip of water, and I need to turn the page. So... About this time, the Marquis Lafayette arrived in the United States and tendered his services to Congress, and he received a commission as Brigadier General. In the service, he joined the army and served at his own expense, and soon became the companion and the friend of no other, Washington. His talents as a soldier were first displayed at Chad's Ford, where he received a wound in the leg, and the effects of which he still carries. The Count Pulaski, Polish gentleman, also distinguished himself in the battle, and was honored with the commission of Major General. The fleet of Lord Howe was now ordered into the Delaware, and his communication with the ocean might remain secure. While the fleet was thus employed, Washington attempted to cut off the main body of British army encamped at Germantown, 7 miles from the city. The attack was well concerted and executed promptly. The British were completely surprised at break of day. October 4th at sunrise, the action became warm, and the Americans were successful at all points until they attempted to dislodge a battalion of the British, who in their flight had thrown themselves into a stone house. This occasioned a delay, broke the pursuit, and gave the enemy time to recover from their surprise and rally to the charge. The action soon became warm and bloody. A thick fog arose which covered the combatants and caused some confusion. The enemy took advantage of this. The Americans referred and abandoned the victory they had so fairly gained. The Americans retired and abandoned the victory they had so fairly gained. The losses of the parties were about equal, but it proved a lesson of caution to General